My family thought it would be a hilarious joke to ditch me in another state. Let's see if he can make it back. They laughed, hit the gas, and disappeared down the road. I never went back. 15 years passed before they finally found me. By then, I had 109 missed calls. The summer I turned 22 was supposed to be like any other, working long shifts at my dad's hardware store for garbage pay, stuck living at home because college was a pipe dream according to William, my father, and, well, reality. I was also the permanent punching bag for my golden boy brother, Michael. We weren't exactly broke, but we sure as hell weren't the kind of family that took trips to Disneyland. So when William, yeah, that's what we called my dad, announced we were hitting the road for my uncle's wedding in Colorado, I should have seen the setup from a mile away. 3 days into that miserable trip, I was already kicking myself for not faking the flu or something. My dad and Michael had made a sport out of ruining my life, each taking turns seeing how much crap I'd take before snapping. Mom Sophia would occasionally throw in a week that's enough, like it actually meant something, but we all knew she wouldn't do a damn thing about it. Look, you need to understand something about my family. William wasn't just your run-of-the-mill asshole father. He was the kind of guy who'd shake you awake at 3 a.m. just to scream about some chore you forgot. He'd throw away your stuff if it was in his way. He'd been telling me I was worthless since I was old enough to string together a sentence. Michael got the message early on: either become Dad's carbon copy or end up like me. You can probably guess which one he picked. That morning, we pulled into some nowhere rest stop in the middle of Colorado. Nothing but open fields, a handful of mountains in the distance, and a sad little bathroom building with vending machines. I'd been passed out in the back seat of our Suburban and figured I should stretch my legs, maybe hit the restroom. Dad and Michael were cracking up about something while Mom inspected her makeup in the visor mirror. I remember exactly what I had on: my faded Metallica t-shirt, ripped-up jeans, and the same pair of beat-up Vans I'd worn for years. I didn't bother bringing my phone because it was charging in the car. Didn't grab my wallet either, why would I? We were in the middle of nowhere, and I was just taking a piss. 10 minutes. Maybe less. When I stepped out, blinking against the bright Colorado sun, the parking space where we'd parked was empty. The dark green Suburban. Gone. At first, I figured they'd just moved it as part of some dumb prank. I circled the entire rest stop. Nothing. That's the thing about betrayal: when it comes from your own family it hits different. I sat on the curb for an hour, convincing myself they were just messing with me and would be back any second. People came and went, some shooting me curious glances. A trucker even asked if I was okay. I lied, told him I was waiting for my girlfriend, who was still in the bathroom. He nodded and moved on. By hour 2, that sinking feeling in my gut had settled into something colder. Something final. They weren't coming back. My first instinct was to borrow a phone and call them, beg them to turn around. But as I stepped toward a woman with 2 kids, something inside me hesitated. A lifetime of memories flashed through my mind. Every time they laughed at my expense, every joke that was really just another way to remind me I was the family punching bag. I could practically hear them. Michael, smug as ever: dude, I bet he's crying right now. Dad, sneering: if he's not as stupid as he looks, he'll figure it out. Mom, with her half-hearted protests that never actually changed anything. And in that moment, I made a choice. I asked the woman if I could use her phone, but I didn't call my family. Instead, I dialed information and got the number for the nearest shelter in Grand Junction, about 40 miles away. Then I turned to her and asked for a ride into town, spinning some story about my family having an emergency and someone coming for me later. She hesitated, but I must have looked harmless enough because she agreed. That first night at the shelter was a wake-up call. I had nothing but the clothes on my back. No ID. No money. No contacts. The shelter worker, Noah, let me use their computer to look up my uncle's address from the wedding invitation I'd seen. I figured maybe I could crash the wedding, confront my family. But as I sat there staring at the screen, another thought hit me: why? Why go crawling back to people who thought leaving me on the side of the road was funny? Instead, I made a new email. Looked up how to replace lost identification. Googled jobs that paid under the table. I put together a plan. 2 days later, I was scrubbing dishes at a tiny diner called Sonny's. The owner, Charlotte, was a 60-something woman with gray hair streaked with purple and more tattoos than I could count. I'd wandered in and asked if they were hiring. Told her I'd lost my wallet but needed work. She looked me over once and said, "Dishwasher quit yesterday. You steal from me, you're dead. Start now. Here's the thing about hitting rock bottom: you only have one way to go. Up." For the next week, I pulled double shifts, crashed at the shelter, wore donated clothes. Noah helped me start the process of getting a new ID by reaching out to vital records in my home state. With my first paycheck, I bought a cheap prepaid phone from Walmart. 7 days after they ditched me, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. It was my mother. Her voice trembled as she asked where I was, if I was safe. She said they'd been searching everywhere. Bullshit. She insisted it was just a joke. Double bullshit. They supposedly waited down the road for 20 minutes. Came back and couldn't find me. Triple fucking bullshit. I listened as she fake panicked, her concern as artificial as ever. In the background, I caught my dad's voice, gruff, impatient. Tell him to quit the dramatics and get his ass to Uncle Henry's. Michael was laughing. Lucas? Are you there? Say something. We've been worried sick. That cold, sinking feeling I'd been carrying. Gone. All that remained was clarity. You wanted to see if I could make it on my own. My voice was steadier than it had ever been when speaking to them. Watch me. I hung up. Blocked the number. Then I blocked every single one I could remember. For good measure, I went to a Verizon store the next day and changed my number entirely. In the hours before I did, I racked up 24 missed calls. I pictured them first concerned, then irritated, then furious as they realized their favorite punching bag wasn't coming back for another round. A month later, I had my own tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. It was cramped, smelled like fabric softener all the time, and had walls so thin I could hear my neighbor sneeze. But it was mine. At Sonny's, I'd worked my way up to prep cook. Charlotte had taken it upon herself to teach me how to handle a knife without losing a finger. Every now and then, I'd check my old email, the one my family had. Messages stacked up like junk mail. From Mom, please come home. We're sorry. From Dad, this childish stunt needs to end now. From Michael, dude, it was a joke. Stop being such a pussy. I never answered. Not once. That's the thing about freedom: once you've had a taste, you don't go back to the cage. Look, I won't lie and say it was easy. Some nights, I'd scroll through Instagram, see people with families who actually seemed to love each other, and feel this ache I couldn't just fuck them away. The loneliness could be suffocating. Holidays were the worst. But every morning, I woke up in my own place, the one that smelled like Downy instead of my dad's cigarette smoke. I went to work, washed dishes where nobody called me worthless, and built my life one slow, steady B. Henry at a time. 3 months after they left me at that rest stop, I checked my email one last time. A new message from Mom: your grandmother is asking about you. Please just let us know you're alive. I closed the email. Deleted the account. Walked behind Sonny's and chucked my old SIM card into the dumpster. That night, Charlotte showed me how to make her famous apple pie. Told me I had good hands for pastry. It was the first real compliment I could remember getting in years. I never looked back. Update 1. 5 years after they abandoned me in Colorado, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw a familiar face. Not because I was lurking on my family's pages. Okay, maybe I was. But this time, Michael's name had popped up in a local news article. DUI. Wrapped his car around a telephone pole. The only casualty? The pole. The paper used his old high school football photo, young, cocky, untouchable. Right beneath it was his mugshot, bloated and blank-eyed. That's the thing about karma, it takes its time, but it never loses an address. By then, I'd built something resembling a life in Colorado. My studio over the laundromat had eventually been traded for a one-bedroom with actual windows. I'd gone from dishwasher to line cook to assistant manager at Sonny's. Charlotte still ran the place with an iron fist and a flour-dusted glove. But she treated me less like a charity case and more like, I don't know, a weird nephew, maybe. The first big thing I bought once I had savings. A laptop. Nothing fancy, just enough to take online classes at the community college. Business management. Basic accounting. The kind of pointless stuff William always said was for people who couldn't do real work. My life had settled into a routine: mornings at Sonny's, afternoons studying, evenings back in the kitchen. Rinse. Repeat. I won't pretend I wasn't still messed up. Trust issues? More like a full-blown subscription service. Anytime someone got too close, I felt the urge to cancel. In 5 years, I'd made exactly 2 friends. Daniel, my neighbor, who played bass in a terrible garage band and brewed homemade beer that tasted like hoppy dishwater. And Charlotte, if she counted as a friend and not just my boss. That changed when Amy started coming into Sonny's. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork. Always ordered the same thing. Denver omelet. No tomatoes. Extra coffee. She'd sit at the counter, completely zoning out over a textbook. Med school, I later found out. Sometimes, she'd get so lost in studying that she'd forget she was even holding a fork. I timed her once. 7 minutes and 34 seconds before she realized her eggs had gone cold. For months of me refilling her coffee before she actually saw me. Her eyes widened just a little, and she said, "Your name tag is spelled wrong." It wasn't. But from then on, it became our thing. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd wear a different wrong name. She'd point it out. I'd act surprised. Dumbest flirting in human history. But it worked. Our first date wasn't even supposed to be a date. Her study group bailed last minute. She had a reservation at this impossible-to-get-into pizza place. And I just happened to be wiping down the counter when she got the cancellation text. Next thing I knew, I was sitting across from her at Alexander's, both of us awkwardly realizing this looked exactly like a date. 6 months later, she moved into my apartment. A year after that, we upgraded to a slightly bigger place. Nothing fancy. Just a 2-bedroom with a bathroom where the toilet didn't run constantly and neighbors who didn't practice bass solos at 2 a.m. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on my family through fake accounts. Not proud of it. But there it is. Dad's hardware store started struggling after a Home Depot opened on the edge of town. I saw him ranting about it on local Facebook pages, his posts getting more desperate, more bitter. Mom's social media became a weird shrine to family. Constant throwback pictures of us all smiling. Posts about missing her boys. Plural. Which was rich. She'd tag Michael but never mention me. Like I'd been erased. Michael bounced from job to job. Lots of vague booking about haters and new opportunities. The classic social media smokescreen of someone whose life was circling the drain. 3 years in, Charlotte pulled me aside during inventory. She was thinking about opening a second Sonny's on the other side of town. Asked if I'd be interested in running it. Not owning. Running. Important distinction. I didn't sleep that night. Kept thinking it was some kind of test. Some kind of joke. People like me didn't get opportunities like that. William had made sure I understood that much. That's the thing about poisonous beliefs. They stay in your system long after you escape the snake. But I said yes. Because Amy, half asleep beside me, mumbled that I'd be stupid not to. Because Daniel, through a haze of weed smoke, said, "Duh, you practically run the original place already." Because Charlotte wasn't William. Wasn't my family. And had never once made me feel worthless. Sonny's East opened 6 months later. Smaller than the original. Different menu. My menu. I worked 90-hour weeks that first year. Lost 10 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. Fought with Amy about never being home. Came home to passive-aggressive post-its on the fridge more than once. But it worked. People came. People came back. The food was good. The vibe was good. We weren't getting rich, but we were making it. For years after being abandoned, I made enough to help Amy with her med school loans. Not all of them, those things are monstrous. But enough to make a dent. She cried when I showed her the payment confirmation. Not movie crying with perfect mascara tears. Real crying. Snotty, red-faced, hiccuping crying. I had never felt more like a real person than in that moment. Then my grandmother died. I found out through Facebook. Mom posted a long, dramatic tribute with 1,000,000 heart emojis. Grandma Isabella had been the only one in the family who ever stood up to William. The only one who ever seemed to see me. She used to slip me $20 when no one was looking. "Save it for your escape," she'd whisper. I think she meant college. Turns out, it was more literal than that. I thought about going to the funeral. Even looked up flights. Amy said she'd come with me. Hold my hand through the whole awful reunion. Daniel offered his crappy hatchback if I wanted to drive instead. Charlotte just shrugged. Dead people don't know if you're there or not. Do what brings you peace. I didn't go. Instead, I sent flowers. Generic sympathy arrangement. Signed the card Lucas. No return address. No note. Just my name. The explosion on social media was immediate. Mom posting about signs and reaching out from beyond. Michael making cryptic comments about prodigal sons. William saying nothing publicly. But I could imagine the storm behind closed doors. A week later, I got a friend request from a profile I didn't recognize. No posts. No friends. Just some random name. I almost deleted it. Then I saw the message. "Matthew, it's Uncle Henry. Your mom gave me your old email, but it bounced back. Are you okay? We've been worried. Your dad has been asking around about you." I blocked the account. That night, I had my first panic attack in 2 years. Sitting on our bathroom floor at 3 a.m. trying not to wake Amy. Feeling like my lungs were collapsing. Imagining William hunting me down. Showing up at Sonny's. Destroying everything I'd built. Amy found me there an hour later. She didn't ask questions. Just sat beside me, her shoulder pressed against mine. When I could finally breathe again, she said the simplest thing. "They can't take anything from you that you don't give them." The next morning, I called a lawyer. Got advice on restraining orders. Tightened privacy settings on everything. Asked Charlotte to tell staff not to give out any information about me. Practical steps. Control what you can control. 5 years to the day after being abandoned, I married Amy. Small ceremony at a state park. Daniel was my best man. Charlotte made the cake. Cried through the whole thing. Mascara running down her wrinkled cheeks. Amy's large, loud family adopted me instantly. Her dad told dad jokes that somehow didn't make me flinch. Her mom hugged me without setting off alarm bells in my head. That's the thing about found family. Sometimes it finds you when you've stopped looking. A week after the wedding, scrolling through my dummy account late at night, I saw it. A post from William on a community page. Looking for information on my son Lucas. Last known location, Grand Junction, Colorado. Family emergency. There was no emergency. I knew that much. What I didn't know was why after 5 years of silence they were suddenly looking for me. So I dug deeper. Created another fake account. Joined the community groups from my hometown. Pieced it together bit by bit. The hardware store had closed. Their house was in foreclosure. Mom had some medical issues she was vague booking about. Michael had moved back home after his third DUI. They weren't looking for me because they missed me. They were looking for me because they needed something. And you know what? For the first time in 5 years, I smiled when I thought about them. Not because I was happy about their misfortune, but because I realized something important. I didn't care anymore. I closed the laptop, crawled into bed next to my sleeping wife, and made a decision. I would keep watching from a distance. Not out of hate. Not out of love. But because sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do. It's what you build while they're busy destroying themselves. Update. It started with a LinkedIn notification. 15 years after being abandoned at that Colorado rest stop, my carefully constructed life had a glitch. Someone had viewed my profile 24 times in one day. Not unusual for LinkedIn. Recruiters do weird stuff like that all the time. What was unusual was the name. Michael Jacob. My brother. That's the thing about the past. It's patient. It'll wait in the tall grass for years before it strikes. By then, my life looked nothing like that first year in Grand Junction. Amy had finished med school, done her residency, and now worked at a local clinic 3 days a week so she could be home with our kids more. We had 2. Ava, 7. Benjamin, 4. The apartment above the laundromat had given way to a modest 4-bedroom on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, but with a yard where the kids could play. Where I could grow tomatoes that never quite turned out right. Sonny's had expanded to 3 locations. Still not some massive franchise, but enough that I didn't have to work the line anymore except when someone called in sick. Charlotte had semi-retired 2 years earlier, though she still showed up unannounced to critique our pie crust technique. I'd made peace with my past. Or so I thought. I still kept tabs on my family from a distance, but the constant checking had faded to maybe once every few months. Last I knew, William and Sophia had moved to a smaller place after losing the house. Michael had gotten married. Divorced. Married again. They'd all seemingly moved on with their lives, just like I had with mine. The LinkedIn thing rattled me, though. 15 years of silence, and now this? I mentioned it to Amy while we were folding laundry, half watching whatever Netflix show we were behind on. She paused, a mismatched sock in each hand. Are you okay? I nodded. Because what else could I say? That I was suddenly 22 again, stranded at a rest stop. That I could hear William's voice in my head, calling me worthless. 3 days later, I was at Sonny's East, the original second location, helping with inventory because our supplier had sent the wrong coffee filters again. Emily at the front called back, "Hey, Matthew. There's some family here asking for you." My first thought was Amy's parents. They sometimes surprised us when they were passing through. I headed out front, already shifting mental gears thinking about how to convince them to stay for dinner. It wasn't Amy's family. William looked older. Grayer. His once imposing frame somehow, smaller. Sophia's face had that pinched look that comes from years of worry. Her hair was dyed an unnatural shade of brown. And Michael. Michael looked like William had at 40. Same stance. Same way of taking up space. There was a woman with him. Young. Maybe early 20s. Hanging back, like she wasn't sure she belonged in this moment. Nobody spoke. The lunch rush noise seemed to fade. All I could hear was my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. William broke first. Said my name like a question. I nodded, because my voice had apparently gone on vacation. Look, I'd imagined this moment 1,000 different ways over 15 years. In some versions, I told them off spectacularly. In others, I was cool and distant, completely unbothered. In a few embarrassing late-night scenarios, there was even a tearful reconciliation. Reality is always messier than imagination. I gestured to an empty table in the corner. Told Emily to bring waters. Sat down across from the people who had once been my family and waited. They'd found me through that magazine article. Rocky Mountain Rising, 10 local success stories. Not even a big feature. Just a sidebar. A photo of me in front of Sunny's original location. But apparently, one of Mom's high school friends had moved to Colorado. Seen it. Sent it to her with a, "Isn't this your son?" message. 104 missed calls. That's how many they'd made to my old number before it was disconnected. Mom had kept count. She mentioned this like it was supposed to mean something. They talked over each other. Mom, about how worried they'd been. William, about how I'd misunderstood what happened that day. Michael, awkwardly trying to act like we were old buddies catching up. The young woman Michael's second wife, Olivia, it turned out just watched me with curious eyes. I let them talk. Watched them spin their version of reality where they weren't the villains. Noticed how William kept eyeing the restaurant, mentally calculating what it might be worth. Saw how Mom's hand trembled slightly when she reached for her water. Caught Michael's practiced charm slipping whenever he thought I wasn't looking directly at him. Finally, when they ran out of steam, I asked the only question that mattered. Why now? That's when the Real story came out, in bits and pieces, between awkward silences. William had medical bills. Heart problems. No insurance. The second house was in foreclosure. Michael's business venture, something vague involving cryptocurrency, had failed spectacularly. Mom needed knee surgery she couldn't afford. They weren't there for reconciliation. They were there for money. I should have been angry. Should have thrown them out. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Pity. They looked so small. So desperate. These giants who had once controlled my whole world were just flawed, broken people. I invited them to dinner at my house that night. Said I needed to think. To talk to Amy. They agreed eagerly. William already halfway to considering it a done deal. That afternoon was surreal. I picked Ava up from her dance class, helped Benjamin with his preschool show and tell preparation, all while texting Amy updates. She offered to take the kids to her sister's. I said no. I wanted them there. Wanted my family to meet my family. Dinner was chicken enchiladas. My specialty that wasn't really special, just a recipe from the back of an old El Paso box that I'd tweaked over the years. Ava set the table without being asked, carefully placing forks on the wrong side until Amy quietly corrected her. Benjamin insisted on wearing his Spider-Man costume. Because it was Tuesday. And apparently, Tuesday was now Spider-Man Day. When the doorbell rang, I almost dropped the dish I was carrying to the table. Amy squeezed my arm as she passed. Whispered that she had my back no matter what. The kids looked up, sensing something important was happening. That's the thing about moments you've dreaded. When they finally arrive, they're simultaneously worse and better than you imagined. Introductions were awkward. William kept calling Amy Annie, despite corrections. Sophia couldn't stop crying whenever she looked at the kids, which freaked Benjamin out. Michael and Olivia were the least awful. Made actual efforts at normal conversation. Though Michael kept dropping hints about family helping family. After dinner, Amy took the kids upstairs for baths and bedtime, giving me a look that clearly said, "Text if you need extraction." Then it was just me and them. Sitting in a living room that suddenly felt too small. William started in on the pitch. How family sticks together. How he'd always known I'd make something of myself. Lie. How they just needed a little help to get back on their feet. $25,000. Just a loan, of course. I let him finish. Then I asked if he remembered what he said to me on my 18th birthday. His face went blank. I reminded him. At least you can't disappoint me anymore once you're not legally my problem. I turned to Mom. Asked if she remembered what she did when William threw my community college acceptance letter in the trash. Nothing. Because she'd done nothing. I looked at Michael. Asked if he remembered telling my first girlfriend I was probably a faggot anyway when she came to the house looking for me. They squirmed. Made excuses. William started to get that voice. The one that used to make me shrink. But here's the thing. I wasn't shrinking anymore. I was 15 years and a million miles from that person. I went to my office. Came back with an envelope. Handed it to William. Inside was a check for $84.50. He looked at it, confused. What the hell is this supposed to be? I told him. In 2010, that was exactly what a Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction to our hometown would have cost. The exact amount it would have taken for me to make it back home from where they abandoned me. The silence was absolute. Then William started shouting. Called me ungrateful. Selfish. Said I'd always been a disappointment. The greatest hits album of my childhood, playing one last time. I didn't argue. Didn't shout back. Just stood up and told them it was time to leave. Mom tried a different approach. Tears. Guilt. How could you do this to family? Michael went cold. The friendly brother mask completely dropped. Olivia just looked embarrassed for all of them. When they finally left William crumpling the check and throwing it on our front step, I closed the door and leaned against it. Legs suddenly shaky. Amy came downstairs. You okay? I nodded. Not trusting my voice. We cleaned up the dishes in silence. Checked on the sleeping kids. Got ready for bed like it was any other night. As I was setting the security system, I pulled up the front door camera on my phone. They were still in the driveway. Arguing. William gesturing wildly. Mom crying. Michael looking at our house with an expression I recognized too well. Envy, mixed with hatred. Finally, they got in their rental car and drove away. I've never seen or heard from them again. Don't expect to. The chapter is closed. That's the thing about revenge. The best kind isn't something you do. It's something you live. Every happy moment with my kids. Every inside joke with Amy. Every quiet Sunday morning with nothing to fear. Every single ordinary day in a life built on my terms. I never made it back home. I did something better. I built my family.